Hello and welcome to the No Huddle Podcast. I hope everybody had a phenomenal holiday season, spent some time with their family. I'm recording this right on New Year's Eve, so if you're watching this in the new year, I hope you had a great start to the New Year's, and yeah, let's just get straight into some football. With playoff football 1 week away, I wanted to do some sort of like rankings and stuff like that, and this was frankly the perfect time, just because if you've been keeping up with the show, I think that you wouldn't be very surprised by the results we had in week 17. Like a lot of the games that I would talk about are just like me repeating myself over and over again. So I thought, why not? Let's switch it up a bit. Let's go to a classic. Let's do some power rankings. And now that we know, it's like, for the most part, we know the playoff field. Of course, we still have two divisions left to be figured out, the NFC South and the AFC North. But other than that, we know the 14 or 16 teams in this case that are going to be in the playoffs. So I wanted to rank them through. And I think this is like the line of demarcation for everybody right around this time. Instead of just ranking like the best teams, we're now going to rank them a little bit differently to where, of course, how good your team is does matter, but it's also a matter of how dangerous do I actually think you are in the postseason. And the easiest way to figure that out, of course, there's no formula or whatever for the postseason. It's always kind of random, of course, with the one-game seasons. But for the most part, it's who's hot and who's healthy. So, and I think you've heard me say that a million times on this show. Who's hot, who's healthy. And yeah, I think you're going to tell by these rankings. That's kind of how this all ends up shaking out. So let's move on. All right, let's get started with the number 16 team I have on my list. By far the worst team on this list. If I had other teams that were not in the playoffs, I would put this team behind them. I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And my God, this team's fall off needs to be studied. It's something that I have been just utterly shocked by in the last 2 months, dating back all the way to they were 5-1. And then they played Detroit in Detroit. It was like a huge game. Winner takes control of the NFC. And ever since then, my goodness, they have completely fell apart. It seems to just only get worse. They cannot run the ball. Bucky Irving in that Dolphins game had 9 carries for 19 yards. And, you know, when Bucky Irving went out, it was like, okay, can they survive with Rachaad White? And they kind of did, right? Of course, it wasn't explosive runs, but it was good enough. They could get solid production out of Rachaad White. And we thought once Bucky comes back, you add him, and everything starts to get explosive again in the run game. But Bucky comes back, and frankly, it hasn't been very good. He has been probably worse than Rachaad White was. So not only can they not run the ball, but Baker is now taking a giant step back as well. And he's kind of good for a few turnovers a game. And they're losing to some of the worst teams in the NFL. It seems to get progressively worse each week. And it reached rock bottom this week with a loss to the freaking Dolphins and Quinn Ewers, who I think has some talent as an NFL player, but it's his third start for a 7th-round pick, and they got blown out. I know the score said 17-20, but that was just because of some Baker stat padding. It was a blowout. The Dolphins kind of just handled business, and they're right now the worst team in the NFC South. If they didn't start off 5-1, they would not be anywhere near the playoffs. Another fun stat, since October 12th, they have only eclipsed 30 points once this season. Once. And we're about to enter 2026. It's crazy. This defense just consistently gets gashed time and time again, despite playing worse and worse quarterbacks. The only reason to think that this team can realistically make a run into the postseason is because Carolina is so inconsistent. That's Tampa, man. It is rough what's going on there. And I think if I were to put my guess in, I think they're going to lose on Saturday. And even if they would win, I think that Atlanta is going to beat New Orleans because Atlanta has Kirk Cousins playing for a contract somewhere else. They have Kyle Pitts playing for a contract. They don't even own their own first-round pick. So I think they're just going to go at it a lot harder than the Saints. That's kind of my best shot at it. So I think either way, Tampa's done, and I think there's going to need to be a lot of changes made to Tampa. Moving on. We got the number 15 team. I think this is where we can finally start to just enter some good teams. We have Pittsburgh, and this is where it feels like Pittsburgh's been all year, or even the last few years. They've just kind of been hovering around mediocrity. And, you know, there was a time we thought things were different. This last month, we saw them go on a hot streak. They beat Baltimore, they beat Miami, they beat Detroit, all teams that were either in the playoffs or in a playoff hunt adjacent time, right? Or adjacent mode, I should say. I don't know if you remember, Baltimore was for the division at the time. Miami was coming off a 4-game win streak, and it looked like they could sneak into the playoffs. And then Detroit was firmly in the postseason, and then their loss kind of booted them out, and now we see the team that they are. So they were riding a hot streak. And then on Sunday, it all falls apart against Cleveland. It was the most classic Steeler loss ever. I have that in my notes. It was a team that played down to competition for just no reason. And one of the things that It's unfortunate because we didn't get a chance to talk about the Steelers-Lions game because of the insanity that was going on in Week 16. We didn't talk about the suspension because that was crazy. Like, he just grabs the Lions fan by their wig or whatever and throws a punch at him. If this hadn't been December, that's not a 2-game suspension. That's a 4-game suspension at the very least. It's crazy. If I was Pittsburgh, I would have taken the opportunity to void off the guarantees, even if it pisses him off. Because, I mean, that's just crazy. It's an absurd thing to do. And we saw them without DK. It looks bad. It looks really bad. Because Rodgers, with the game on the line, took 3 straight shots to MVS on Denzel Ward. I don't understand. The 2 fade balls especially. Absolutely brutal. He had other open guys. He just kept trying MVS over and over again. And it didn't even seem like they were on the same page for 2 guys who are supposed to have an insane amount of chemistry. And honestly, to top it all off, Darnell Washington, who is my favorite player on the Steelers, an incredibly underrated player. Film guys love him. Steelers fans love him. But he was just starting to get some public recognition because I think Collinsworth on the Sunday night broadcast earlier was doing a great job of highlighting him, and a couple other guys. He was starting to get some public recognition, and then he breaks his forearm, and he's done for the year. So that was my favorite player on the team. He is the best blocking tight end in football because he's just built like a linebacker, or not a linebacker, a tackle. He's bigger than a linebacker. Yeah, that just sucks. Every playoff team is rooting for them on Sunday to beat the Ravens. So we'll see. I don't think Pittsburgh is, at this point, they just kind of feel like the same old Steelers. Moving on. At number 14, I got Carolina. This season, they just have not been able to take what seems like the hundreds of opportunities that Tampa has given them for the division, and they just couldn't capitalize on any of them. Of course, a few weeks ago, they could have locked up the division by beating New Orleans, but they failed, and the division stayed up for grabs. And then even this week, with this Bucs loss to Miami, they could have beaten Seattle and won the division again, but the offense just completely fell apart. Bryce Young and this offense is so incredibly frustratingly inconsistent every single week. Bryce Young threw for 54 passing yards in this one, with the division and the season potentially on the line. It is unbelievable. Their run game is either highly inefficient, like we saw against Seattle, or like we saw a few weeks ago, or efficient, like we saw against Seattle, where they're getting 5 yards a carry, but then they don't get enough carries. So this team can never find the balance. It's either inefficient and they just keep sticking with it, or it's efficient and then for some reason they just don't get their guys the ball. I would lean towards just keep giving them the ball, even if it's inefficient, because you can't win these huge games just with Bryce Young. That's not going to be their path to success. So it's rough. And in Seattle, every opportunity to win. It was 3-3 Carolina ball after a Seattle turnover. They had it. They had everything in their grasp. And then Chuba Hubbard fumbles. And then Bryce Young throws a pick. And then it's 17-3. And that's all she wrote. It sucks. It was a terrible, terrible fumble by Chuba that really started it all off. And I will say, though, with Carolina, even though I'm doggy on them here, it's very likely they're going to get in. Like I mentioned before, I think that they're going to beat Tampa on Saturday. And if not, I think Atlanta beats the Saints on Sunday. So they're going to get in. But I think they're going to be just absolute cannon fodder for either the Rams or the Seahawks. And unless the Rams choke like they did before, or they get the Seahawks team that, does only put up 3 points, but then their defense lets up, I don't see a path for them. I will say, this is the line. I say from here on out, every team is a realistic shot. People have talked about, and I've talked about so many times, about how this might be the most parity we've ever seen in the NFL. Yeah, from here on out, any of these 13 teams have a realistic shot at it. So moving on. This team might be kind of low. I think that on most lists, they have this team like fringe top 10, I'd say. But for me, it's a good bit lower. I have the LA Chargers here at 13. For me, it's just as simple as they have no offensive line. Ignore the final score. Houston dominated that game. I understand that the Chargers had like a little bit of a rush at the end. No, Houston cooked them. That rush, the best defensive line against the worst offensive line of football, really did not work out. What a shocker. Who could have guessed that one? But there was one rep I want to highlight, just to show that Herbert had literally no time in this game. Both the right guard and the right tackle for the Chargers get insta-shed, like it's Madden, like it's a video game, like it's an animation. Just instantly thrown off. He has 2 guys in his face, somehow evades both of them, and then throws a beautiful sidearm to Oronde Gadsden. I don't know why I just like calling him like that. But gets it to Gadsden, and he drops it. One guy, like Justin Herbert's amazing. Don't get me wrong. I am not one of these people who's like a Justin Herbert hater. I just don't really get that. But at some point, one guy just can't fix everything. I don't know if Josh Allen's succeeding on this team. I don't know if a healthy Mahomes is succeeding on this team. I don't know if a healthy Burrow is succeeding on this team. At some point, It's just like, it's an untenable situation. It's not going to work. So one guy is just not fixing all the problems that they have. Even though I think Herbert's a great quarterback, at some point, it's just not enough. And this offensive line, yeah, it's not happening. And that's including how much I kind of like the defense. Jesse Minter is a really, really good DC. I will say, I'm going to get into one small tangent here, Chargers fans. I have no idea. The way you guys run quarters is beyond me. So for you guys that don't know, quarters is it's quarters. You split. You have four deep safety, or not deep safeties. You have four guys in deep zones, right? And each of them take a quarter of the field, right? Quarters. And the Texans in the first drive of the game hit a 75-yard post because they ran the post for the left side, cutting into the middle. And the left side corner thinks that he has help. I think it was Dante Jackson. So he's running. And then for some reason, both safeties and the outside corner crash down on slant routes. So it just leaves his post as wide open, and Dante Jackson's playing the outside. And then all he can do is just look over the middle and be like, oh my God, there's no one there. And C.J. Stroud just throws a perfect ball, and it's the easiest touchdown ever. And then that's bad. Okay, that's really bad. But, it's one mistake. You can live with it. You can try and come back from it. But then they do the same thing again to Jalen Noel, and it's another 45-yard touchdown. Where, again, the other guy, the corner thought he has help. He just runs wide open over the middle. And again, the middle and the outside deep zones crash in. It's beyond me. I don't know what the hell is going on there. But yeah, yikes. And I think they adjusted later in the game, thankfully, because Houston really didn't do anything for the rest of the game. But my God, we had to talk about that. That was horrible on Saturday. I don't understand what happened there. I don't know what's going on. They just need to fix that ASAP. Anyways, I do like the defense. I like Tula Pelotu, I want to say. I might be getting that wrong. But yeah, he's great. He's like a true star edge rusher. He makes an impact on a bunch of plays, not only just the sacks. He's awesome, and he's going to be great for them for a long time. But when it comes to this team, the offensive line is just too much. Considering they're going to have to either go to New England or go either to Jacksonville or to Baltimore or the Steelers, I just don't see it. Moving on, we have a team that I thought was quite dead in the water, quite done here. And we have the Baltimore Ravens here at 12. I said my rant last week. I did a really, really long segment on the Ravens because I thought we were done talking about them for the rest of the season. I'm like, okay, I aired out every grievance I had. I'm like, why aren't we getting the ball to Derrick Henry more? Why are we trying to play Lamar Jackson when he's clearly injured? All this stuff. And you know what? Someone in the Ravens is like, you know what? Let's start using our brain a little bit. And what do you know? It works. They blew out the Packers 24-41. And they figured out, Derrick Henry is good. I have in my notes, literally Derrick Henry equals good. Who would have known? My trust in Snoop Huntley take has aged like fine wine. Love that. Because Snoop Huntley is more than capable of running this offense. And if Lamar is not fully healthy, there's just no reason to push Lamar out there. Because Snoop is more than good enough to win some of these games, including this game against the Steelers. So this team just didn't get in their own way, didn't do stupid shit. And look what happened. I think if Lamar is, I said 90% healthy, I guess it's hard to quantify how healthy you can be. But you know what? If Lamar does not say, like, I'm feeling 90% like myself, then don't play him. It's like, because Snoop, again, more than good enough to win the game. He's more than good enough to run the offense. He can hand the ball off to Derrick Henry. He can hit some quick hitters. And he can be, a big thing is, Lamar was just not healthy enough to have his legs really be a factor. And Derrick Henry and this Ravens rushing game is so good when, of course, the quarterback is a factor in the running game. Make it an 11-on-11 game, not a 10-on-11 game. And Snoop can give you that. Snoop has legs. So it just really adds another gear to the Ravens run game. It makes life easier for Derrick Henry. So I think that's your path to winning in Week 18. If Lamar is not fully healthy, which I really doubt he is, play Snoop, run the ball with Derrick Henry, and honestly, that should be enough to get you the game because the Steelers are just not playing great football right now. Don't rush Lamar back. That is the way they can lose this game, is if they rush Lamar back, he has a few turnovers, and what do you know? You're getting your quarterback dragged through the media for the next 6 months. Your season's over. Don't do that. That's not the path. Trust Snoop. Trust the ground game to win you this game, and I think they're way more than capable. And then from there, let's see if Lamar comes back from the wild card healthy, and we'll see what happens. Moving on. We got Green Bay, the team the Ravens just beat. My thing with them is they're just not healthy at all. I really like Malik Willis. I thought he had a great game. I didn't want to crap on the Ravens defense too much, just because I really thought Malik Willis just played an absurdly great game. I think he's going to start somewhere else. I think he's going to get paid. I think we're going to see like a notification on our phones come March, and it's like, who just paid Malik Willis $50 million for 2 years? And then at the time we're going to be like, that's so much money to give. And then we're going to think about it a little bit and be like, you know what? I kind of like that contract. That's at least how I'm going to think about it. The main reason for me that they're up this high, like if you look, their roster is just so decimated by injuries. Offensive line injuries, secondary injuries, obviously injuries to an injury to Micah Parsons, and he's going to be done for the year. Obviously Tucker Kraft is done for the year. But the reason why they're up probably higher than some of these other teams, despite not being as good as them, is because that they're going to get Chicago in round 1, thanks to Philadelphia resting their starters and probably Chicago just beating Detroit anyways. It's such a big rivalry to the point where, remember, I said which team I'm ranking based on who can do the most damage in the playoffs. And yeah, if they get Chicago, they 100% could upset them just because it's such a big rivalry. It's a division rival on steroids. That atmosphere is going to be insane. The players are going to be fired up as hell. And despite deficiencies on the roster, I think we all know it's going to be a great game. There's no way Chicago blows them out. So this team has some talent, but I think as far as like their ability to win the Super Bowl and stuff like that, we were robbed of a really, really fun year where they could with just all the injuries. I just don't see a way this team is going to be that dangerous heading into the postseason to where they can potentially go in and upset some of these higher seeds. Outside of Chicago, I should say. That's mostly just because it's a rivalry. Moving on. We've got Philadelphia at 10. Top 10, by the way. For me, it's just all about the defense. They're getting healthier on that end too because they just got Jalen Carter back. For Philly, it's really just been the same story all year. In that way, they have been the most consistent team in football. The offense is really awful and hard caps them to where I can't put them higher than 10 without feeling like really weird about it. For reference, they have 3 halves this year. So there have been 34 halves of football played by the Philadelphia Eagles. In 3 of them, they have negative passing yards. How? How is that possible? That means for 10% of the time, Philadelphia is better off just spiking the ball because they're going to just do nothing with the ball anyways. And in Buffalo, it almost cost them the game. It probably should have cost them the game because, again, they went negative in the second half. Yeah, I don't know. It's past the point where I can't just say, I'll just blame Kevin Patullo and move on like a lot of Philadelphia fans are doing. I think that anyone with this offense right now really needs some serious looking into. That includes freaking Nick Sirianni, who I just despise. I'm not doing this Nick Sirianni rant again. I just don't know what he does for your team, and he has this level of unearned arrogance and confidence, whatever. Jalen Hurts has played really poor football over this whole year, really, and unless they play the 2 worst teams in football, in my opinion, in the Raiders and the Commanders, yeah, they don't look very good at all. All right, and he has struggled mightily. And they still can't run the ball against anybody, despite playing Buffalo, who had been giving up over like 4.5 yards per carry, and were getting decimated by literally everyone on the ground game. Saquon still can run the ball. So I just don't see a way for this offense to find another gear this year. I think 10 is more just respect because they just won the Super Bowl and because of how good that defense is. The defense would need to put on like really an all-time carry job to get this team past round 1. I'm not putting it past them that they like can't magically figure out the offense, but if I'm being honest, that would probably start by firing their coordinator, and I don't think Nick Sirianni is going to do that. So, yeah. Moving on. We got the Los Angeles Rams at number 9, and I know this might be kind of low. I think some people have them higher, maybe closer to the top 5, top 6. But for me, it's who is hot and who is healthy. And on both fronts, the Rams completely fail. They're riding a 2-game losing streak, of course. They had just lost to Atlanta on Monday night, and they lost to Seattle in the game of the year. They've suffered, not only that, but they've suffered injuries to their starting left tackle, Alaric Jackson, who was out for the Falcons game. Suffered an injury to Kevin Dotson, who was also out for the Falcons game, Devontae Adams, and more. So they're a team that really desperately needed the bye for their injuries. I'm not sure when those offensive linemen are coming back. I tried to check, but I really couldn't find anything. And then Devontae is coming off a pretty nasty hamstring pull to where I don't think you can just say he's guaranteed back for the wild card. Like, I know that he had some looked pretty good pregame and like could run, but I don't think that we can just take stock in pregame footage as like, okay, as gospel, he's back. So I think they really needed the bye, and now they're going to have to either travel to Philly, which is by far their worst case scenario, or travel to Carolina or Tampa. Most likely Carolina. Not just that, though. Their defense, which had been one of the best units in football through the first 11 games, has been a bottom 5 defense through the last 5. And the wheels have just completely fallen off. When you think about the Rams defense, right? Of course, their front 4 is amazing. You have Jared Verse, you have Byron Young, you have Braden Fisk. But outside of that, you go to the linebackers, you go to the corners in the secondary. It's not good. It's really not good. This is the point I made all year. It's a point that I think I always make about the Rams for the last few years. Emmanuel Forbes is their CB1. At some point, I just don't care how many good games he has in a row or something like that, or if he doesn't give up a catch or he gets an interception, he's just not a good corner. I have seen way too much tape of him in Washington to believe that he fully turned it around in like half a season. So I don't trust Emmanuel Forbes at all at my corner 1. At corner 2, you got McCreary from the Titans, who they traded for in midseason, and I don't think he's panned out the way they've wanted him to. And their safeties aren't great either. And you look at their linebackers, and I know Nate Landman got a contract extension. He's a great tackler, but he's not particularly great in coverage, and Omar Speights definitely is not great in coverage. So I think those deficiencies at those spots are just too hard to overcome. And yes, playing against that front four is really hard. Teams against the last 5 weeks clearly have found a way around it. And once you can start going at the back end, once you can start getting, it's like a tortoise. I don't know how else to put it. The shell is scary. Yeah, that front four, it's going to be hard for any team to move. But once you get past the shell, it's soft. It's easy. It's easy pickings. So I think that's going to be really, really troubling for them. And I think this Falcons game also exposed something else, which is I think there should be some concerns about the offense. Stafford's 3 picks in this game were really bad. They were just like, for lack of better words, they were just mallards. You look at the one he had to Jesse Bates, the pick 6, he just overthrew his guy by 10 yards to where I don't know what he was seeing. That was just rough. And then he got baited twice by Xavier Watts. Once he thought he had him a receiver one-on-one with the linebacker, and I don't know if he just didn't do a good job of looking off the safety or whatnot, but Xavier Watts fully tracked that and just got an easy interception, which led to a 93-yard Bijan rushing touchdown. By the way, Rams rush defense, also not great. And then the last pick was Xavier Watts. He just, again, Matthew Stafford tried to get a quick throw in over the middle. Didn't do a good job of looking off the safety, and Xavier Watts fully drove on the ball and got an easy interception. So I think that's something to be concerned about. We know Stafford has, outside of this year, this is looking more like the Stafford we've seen in years past, where he's definitely good for a turnover, or at the very least a few turnover-worthy plays a game. And if you look at 2021, even in the Super Bowl, he had 2 picks. So he just threw away the MVP on 3 picks on Monday, and I don't know. I'm not willing to fully just say, oh, it's an off game for Stafford. I think that we have seen him do this stuff before. Moving on, we've got Buffalo here at number 8. For me, this is basically the floor for any team who's going to have playoff Josh Allen, especially in a playoff field without Mahomes and Burrow. It was just a rough game for the offense out there in Philly, or against Philly, but it wasn't really anything surprising. This has been the most inconsistent team here. I think Carolina is like the second most inconsistent, but number 1 by far is Buffalo as far as inconsistencies. And really, whenever they can't get a stable running game with James Cook, like James Cook had 20 carries for 74 yards, and right around 3 yards a carry, whenever that happens, yeah, it becomes kind of a mess. You either get an insane game out of Josh Allen, you get something like the Tampa game, where they won 44-32, or you get, something like this, where it's just a lot of dumb turnovers, some missed throws by Josh Allen, because he tries to put on the Superman cape, and sometimes it just doesn't work. And they couldn't do anything until the middle of the fourth quarter. Thankfully for them, they were playing Philly, so they had a shot still. But the defense, they couldn't get it done. Josh Allen just misses on the 2-point conversion. I will say, the defense had like an encouraging performance. I didn't know that they had that in them to stuff a ground game. Granted, it was Phillies, which, my God, imagine saying that at the beginning of the year. It's easy to stop Phillies ground game, but whatever. Yeah, they fully stuffed Saquon, which I just didn't know they had in them. This was one of the worst rush defenses in the league. So credit to them in that respect. But I don't know whether that's, them or that's more just Philly being Philly. So it's overall not that great of a roster. I think the main reason why people are expecting Buffalo to go far this year is just because it's like, oh, well, there's no Mahomes and there's no Burrow, so let's just see. Probably should be Josh Allen's here. But outside of that argument, there isn't a particularly great one for Buffalo. Like, this is probably one of the weaker Buffalo teams we've seen. I don't think that this team is going to either... The way they can win the Super Bowl is if they can get a fully stable ground game going with James Cook, and if their defense can just be solid, then yes, they can. But that's pretty unlikely. Like, this run game is very up and down. So what it probably is going to require is a few just Josh Allen insane masterclasses, which he can do. But I'm just concerned about him doing that consistently for 4 games. I just don't think it's a very sustainable path to winning. And you know what? It's purely out of respect for Josh Allen that that the Bills are up at number 8. Because if you look at their roster and compare it, especially to some other teams I just mentioned, they kind of get blown out in that respect. So, moving on. And number 7, we've got the Houston Texans. Like I mentioned with Philly, all about the defense again. The best defensive unit in football. That edge rushing duo is so good, my God. I've sung the praises of this Houston team a million times. I know it might be a little exhausting, but you get Will Anderson, you get Danielle Hunter on the same D line. Good things are going to happen. You get they earlier had Tim Settle, but he got injured too, which sucks. But yeah, when you had Tim Settle and Sheldon Rankins, oh my god, that D line was so good. And it still is really good. But I've always been like, despite Houston being 0-3, I slammed the table and said they're a good team. Despite Houston, having Davis Mills in, I said, you know what? I don't care. They can still win games and be really good. And you know what? I was right. The Texans have been on this long ass win streak. They're just one of the hottest teams in football. But for the first time, I'm starting to get some real concerns, because my whole thing with Houston was, if their offense can put up 20 points per game, they can beat anybody in football. And part of me was like, I think that's just going to come naturally because they have a talented quarterback, and I think they just need some time to figure it out. And now we're entering week 18, and it seems like they still haven't figured it out. Against the Raiders, they put up 16 points of offense. Of course, they had the pick six. And against the Chargers, they got to 20, but 14 of them were just gifted by the other team not knowing how to run quarters well. So I don't know if they can consistently put up 20. That's the main thing. That's what I'm terrified about when it comes to this team. So they're kind of, if you look at it, they're a pick six and those 2 blown coverages away from fighting for a playoff spot on Sunday. So I think in that respect, I'm starting to get concerned as far as, is this team's offense going to just fully limit them? I thought it would be just 20 and we're good. But that 20 number might just be way too hard. So I kind of say they're kind of like Philly in the NFC, but I trust them a lot more to catch fire than Philly. Like, if someone tells me Philadelphia won the Super Bowl, I'd be, okay, fully, yeah, 100%. I think their defense just went on a generational run. But Houston, I would think it's like, okay, their offense took a small step forward, and their defense just continued playing the way that they can. I think that's just a much more plausible leap for Houston. So, moving on. At number 6, we have the other AFC South team. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars. And my God, this team is red hot heading into the postseason. Trevor Lawrence had his first mediocre game in over a month, which is absurd. He'd have been on such a heater. But they still won, thanks to a Phillip Rivers pick six. Trevor and the offense have been getting so much credit for this win streak, as they deserve. As they deserve a lot of it. His offense has been so different since getting Jacoby Myers. Like, if you had told me that the Jaguars were 12-4, I'd be like, oh my God, Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter really worked out that well, huh? And then you'd be like, no, Brian Thomas Jr. is MIA. Travis Hunter is out for the year. It's all about Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington. I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But hey, what do you know? We're here. So this offense has been so good since they've been getting stable play out of those receivers. Parker Washington looks like a blooming star. He looks awesome. But heading into the point I was making before, the thing I always liked about Jacksonville, and the thing that isn't getting enough credit, in my opinion, is that defense. And they've not just been getting enough love at all. They've been holding teams to less than 20 fairly consistently, especially through this little run they've been on. And their resume is really impressive. They held the Chargers to 6 points. They held Denver to 17, and they swept Indy and held them to under 20 twice. And in one of those games, they had Phillip Rivers, who, Phillip Rivers is an old-ass man, but his offenses haven't been very bad. So I think they deserve a lot more credit in that respect. And the whole team, as far as their resume on paper, yeah, they've been some very, very good teams. So ton of credit to Jacksonville in that respect. But, of course, this is the year where everybody has a flaw. So what's my main flaw with Jacksonville? I'm very concerned about Trevor Lawrence in the postseason. I understand that he's had a great run and that he's been on a hot streak and that now he's with a good coach. But I need to see it to believe it with Trevor. I need to see him do this through the postseason. I need to see it for probably 2 postseason games to the point where I would believe it. So if they can stay hot, if Trevor Lawrence can prove me wrong, then yeah, this Jacksonville team can definitely go far. But in my opinion, I think it'll be a Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to come back to bite him. We'll see. Again, I'm happy to be wrong, but we'll see. Moving on. At number 5, entering the top 5 here, we've got Denver. They had a pretty rough showing on Christmas. They reverted back to their old form of just having fun, messing around for 3 quarters, playing in the snow, relaxing. They're up on Christmas. It's Mile High. And then, oh, shoot, wait, we have a game to win. Oh, crap, that one's kind of important, huh? Locked in for the last drive. And, of course, they get it done, as usual, with them. With Denver, their defense is just really starting to show some cracks. They let Jacksonville put up 34. They let Green Bay put up 26. They let Washington put up 27. And all those games have been in the last month or so. So their defense, where on paper, like Houston, I've sung the praises of their defense a million times. If you look at this team, like they have the most sacks of any team in football. They have an amazing secondary with like no flaws. And they have great linebacker play with Singleton and Dre Greenlaw. My guy, Dre Greenlaw. Love that. But they're starting to get worked a little bit. And I think that's something to keep an eye on. But the main reason I have him so high, despite concerns I have with the offense, despite the inconsistency of Bo Nix, which I have, Bo Nix, man, I think he's a very talented quarterback. I'm very much I do not agree with anybody who says he's a bad quarterback. I think he gets so much hate for no reason. But he can be just frustratingly inconsistent. And we saw that again on Christmas. But with the 1 seed locked up, back to positives, with the 1 seed locked up, because the Chargers are going to rest their starters on Sunday, Jim Harbaugh already came out and said that Herbert won't play and most of the other guys won't play. It means that the postseason is now going to run through Mile High, which if you know anything about Denver sports, Denver home field advantage is better than any other home field advantage. And that isn't just like me. I watched a really cool video or read an article, and it's like their home field advantage compared to just every other home field is insane. They win so many more of their games at home. And it's going to be a monumental effort to get your team up, go up to Mile High, and knock off Denver with that defense and the way that offense can play. And I've seen it play this year. It's just going to be difficult regardless. So that's why I have them in the top 5. Moving on. At number 4, we have a team that might be kind of high on this. I think some rankings have them a little lower down. But I have the Chicago Bears. Remember, they had the 2 seed basically locked up with Philly resting their starters against Washington. And even if Washington can't pull it off there, all the Bears have to do is beat Detroit in Week 18, who had just lost to Max Brosmer. But their offenses just look so good. Despite injuries at receiver, they did that. They had that performance on Sunday night without Romo Dunze, which was just so impressive. And it was a tough loss against them. It was a tough loss in San Francisco. But I think their defense is getting too much crap. I think that people have some recency bias, especially because as we're getting late into December here, I think, of course, recency bias is going to just hit you hard. You forget about what happened earlier in the year. But this is a defense that we know can force takeaways. And they did against the Niners. They got a pick 6 to start the game. They have Jalen Johnson, who shuts down basically half the field because he's so goddamn good at that outside corner spot. And, I think that they just ran into the best offense in football. This is a Chicago team that did not play bad on defense earlier. They were holding teams to right around 20 points per game. And they were still getting a turnover. And hell, they held the Browns to 3 points, which isn't nothing. You know what I mean? So I think that they're getting a little bit too much crap. And I think that they could definitely hold a team to 20, 25 points. And the main thing is, I think they can get a takeaway, which they've done all year. At some point, it's just this, with takeaways, it's I don't know how sustainable that's going to be. But at this point, it's been 17 weeks. We just know that they're going to force a takeaway. Giving the ball back to that offense, it's going to be really, really hard to beat them. And when you're doing a ranking like this, where it's who do I think is the best team? Who's the most dangerous team heading into the postseason? It's who do you not want to play? And Chicago's got one hell of a run game with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai. I think Kyle Monangai is a good bit better than DeAndre Swift, by the way. Just my opinion. They have excellent coaching. I think Ben Johnson's the second best play caller in football. And you look at which quarterback is playing at his best. Chicago checks all those boxes. And on the Caleb part, of course, I went to the Bears game, Bears-Niners. By the way, fun story, got punched in the face. I know it doesn't look so bad right now. Maybe it'll look worse when it's more zoomed in. But it was friendly fire. Drunk fan, was celebrating the last play. I think he went to go try and, I don't know what the hell he was trying to do. And I'm getting just punched in the face. And I was looked over, I'm what the hell? And then I realized he's an Niners fan. I'm okay, you know what? It's fine. Friendly fire. It's okay. Yeah, I had a little scratch, and I got a little bump on my nose. But you know what? Whatever. It was still a cool game to go to. But yeah, we got fully sidetracked on that. But Caleb, after seeing that guy with my own eyes, man, he's just unbelievable. And yeah, he's still really inconsistent. And sometimes you just want to see him hit the easy ones. He had Luther Burden wide open on that drag route for a touchdown. And you know what? That could have been the game there. But if he makes the simple throws, this offense is just insanely hard to stop. So when you look at, again, who's hot and who's healthy, what is the path to this team winning a Super Bowl? You go to Philly, you're going to need a generational defensive run, and you're going to need the offense to fully turn around in the span of 1 week. Probably not going to happen. You look at you scroll up, you go to Houston, it's you need the offense to finally get things clicking again. I don't know if that's going to happen. You look at Jacksonville, it's you need Trevor Lawrence to play the way he has the last few weeks, and you need him to continue that into way harder teams and into the postseason. So all of these are going to take pretty big leaps for you to win the postseason just because, well, frankly, yeah, winning in the playoffs is hard. But for Chicago, the recipe is, can you hold a team to less than like 25 points a game? Can the defense get a takeaway, which they've done all year? And can Caleb hit easy throws? And you know what? They get all those things, they're going to be a really, really hard out. So that's why I have them at 4. If you look at what are the steps needed for this team to find themselves in the AFC Championship, find themselves in the Super Bowl, what they need is so much more reasonable than what other teams need. So if he just makes simple throws, plays within, plays confidently, can play within the system at times, and then at times go do amazing Caleb things, yeah, they're going to be really hard out. Moving on, we have the last team that's really just all about defense. I have Seattle here at number 3. Mike Macdonald is just such a good defensive coach. And this defense, my God, it's just so good. They have the best interior defensive line in the league with Byron Murphy, with Leonard Williams, and with Marcus Lawrence, who sometimes plays inside, sometimes plays outside. But yeah, they have a phenomenal secondary, except for Tariq Woolen. They have Devon Witherspoon. They have Julian Love. They have Nicky Monwarrier, who's quickly turned into one of my favorite players to watch. He is just awesome. They have Ernest Jones at linebacker, who's a beast. My God, if the Rams had Ernest Jones right now, instead of just trading him for no reason, just because they didn't want to pay him, whatever. The way Rams do some things confuses me. But yeah, that defense is just so, so good. And against Carolina, that offense was just doing nothing all game. And until the defense just said, you know what, fine, here, just take it. I'll do it for you. And you got 2 turnovers. This Seattle team and the Seattle defense is so, so good. But for me, the big drawback is the offense, like a lot of the other teams I have on this list. And it's a question of, can Sam Darnold play in 4 huge games and step up? And if we look back at this year, it's like, why did Seattle not win the Super Bowl? Why did Seattle not get to the conference championship? Yada, yada, yada. It would be, Sam Darnold struggled in the big spot. I don't see a world where it's their defense got gashed. I think it's going to be because the offense couldn't get going. That Rams game, yes, the last drive was amazing. The fourth quarter comeback was great. But if you look at the other 3.5 quarters, it wasn't great. Sam Darnold still had 2 awful interceptions. They got completely stuck. It was a punt return touchdown that really got them going. So I'm kind of concerned about this team, especially if they're a wild card, because that means they'll have had to play in 5 huge games where San Francisco, and the wild card is if they lose. So San Francisco and then wild card, divisional, conference championship, Super Bowl. That's 5 huge games where Sam Darnold's going to need to play good. I'm concerned about that. And you know what? If he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong in that respect. So Sam also, by the way, has just not been the same since right around the midseason point. I think teams just started to get a little bit of tape on him, start to understand how this offense works. And from there, it hasn't looked very pretty at all. And against Carolina, it was just not good. Heaven forbid anyone has to go back and rewatch the Seattle-Carolina game. That thing sucked. But yeah, Sam's just not been the same guy. So we'll see. I think they're going to lose to the Niners on Saturday. But that's a separate point. We'll get to that a little later. Moving on. Might be my boldest take on here. I don't think people really have them this high. I know there's concerns with this team, but I have the New England Patriots at number 2. I understand the strength of schedule concern. That is the number one thing. But Drake May is just playing out of his freaking mind right now. Drake May is so, so good. He has just locked up the MVP. He's minus 400 with his performance against the Jets and Matthew Stafford's abysmal performance against the Falcons. He has the MVP secured. And if you've been following this channel ever since Jonathan Taylor left his insanely historic place where he was going to break a bunch of records, I have been very much on the Drake May as the MVP train. I think right around like week 12. So this is nice to see for me. I think this isn't even a diss on Stafford. I just think Drake May, if you look at his team, it was a 4-win team. He doesn't have particularly great receivers. His offensive line's been very banged up throughout this year. Of course, with Will Campbell going down. And he still found a way. You look at that Ravens game. He was so good in that fourth quarter. So just because Stafford had a few 1-yard touchdown passes to Devontae Adams and he ends up with more on the year does not mean that he should be the MVP, in my opinion. As far as the strength of schedule stuff as well, like they don't just, when they play bad teams, they're not like Denver. They just blow them out. They absolutely kick their ass. So they're handling business when it's on their schedule. And otherwise, they got a huge wins over Baltimore. They got a huge win over Buffalo. And yeah, one time, and they also lost to Buffalo, but that was a close game. They had a 21-point lead. They should have won that game, but they were a young team that made mistakes. They had a rough game. And you know what? You learn from that. So they're going to get Will Campbell back for the postseason as well, So again, getting healthier. Of course, they're hot. I mean, New England's been just winning games really all throughout the whole year, seemingly effortlessly. And I will say this ranking is contingent. We got some news over the last 2 days that Stephon Diggs and Christian Barmore are in some like dicey legal situations for what else I don't know how else I can refer to it. They got some allegations thrown at them. So I don't want to speculate on any of that. All I know is that right now they're not on any commissioners exempt lists. They're not reporting. They're still reporting to the team. And it seems like they're still on track to play in January. If that changes, then yes, this ranking will change because I don't think Stephon Diggs is replaceable. And I don't think Christian Barmore is replaceable for this team. I think those would be two injuries not injuries. I think that would be two situations that would end their year. So we'll see on that stuff. I just don't want to speculate on any of the allegations and stuff. So I'm just going to go with the information that we know. Yeah. I think New England's I think they're a really, really talented team. It's a huge credit to Mike Vrabel, huge credit to Drake May, that this team, which if you look on paper is not like insanely talented. And frankly, I've been a guy who's been like, I just don't see it. I think they're young. I just don't see how they're going to win games in the postseason. But right now, if you look at this AFC field, it's just not particularly good. So I'm going to go with the team that has the MVP, that's been hot, as my number 2 team. And number 1, I don't think this should be much of a surprise. In my opinion, they should be the consensus number 1. I know that's not what a lot of people have on their lists. I don't care. I think they're the obvious number 1, for me at least. Every ranking here is difficult. You look at the landscape of the NFL. There's so many of these rankings I think you can easily interchange. But one that you can't, in my opinion, is the San Francisco 49ers at number 1. Ever since Brock Purdy has came back, they are averaging over 35 points per game. It's insane. They've averaged 40 over the last 3 weeks. They put up 48 against Indy, if you don't want to count the pick six, 41, and then they put up 42 against Chicago. It is so, this offense is dynamic as hell. And my God, a healthy Brock Purdy paired with Kyle Shanahan, it's just dynamite. It is so fun to watch. Even with Kittle missing games, even with Pearsall missing games, it still works. It still just works because you have those two paired together. And I think the natural reaction is like, well, the defense. But then this defense has a lot of flaws. 100%. My God, the linebacker play in coverage. Eesh. D. Winters does not know how to guard a flat to save his life. Tatum Bethune gets picked on all game. These safeties, Jair Brown, and then Mustafa, not so much with him, but mostly Jair Brown, my God, they get picked on all game. But even with all that being said, they can still get stops when needed. The pick six happens. The Niners get the ball back. They score. They shut down Chicago for the next 2 drives. And that lets the Niners retake control of the game. You can fast forward to the end of the game. And what do you know? Last 2 drives, Chicago comes out with the field goal, and then they stuff them on the goal line to win the game. So clearly can get stops when needed. I mean, if they win on Saturday, there's a very good chance that their next game would be with Fred Warner back, which my main thing with this team is their linebackers can't cover. So that would fix their number 1 issue, obviously, because you have one of the greatest coverage linebackers of all time stepping back in. And if that happens, like, my God, yeah, I think that very much the NFC is the Niners to lose it if that happens. Again, getting healthier, that's the Fred Warner point. They're obviously hot. They're 6-0 since Brock's been back, and their offense is insanely on fire. Not only that, you're getting Kittle back on Saturday. That looks like pretty much all but confirmed. We'll see about Trent Williams. Even if he doesn't come back on Saturday, he looks pretty good to come back in the postseason. And I think my overall point with them is, if you look at the NFL, it is so hard to figure out who's good this year, right? That has been the thing all year. I've always opened the show with, and we still don't know what's happening. And as we've gone closer and closer to the year ending, it's still kind of difficult. Like this top 13, you can kind of jumble all together, and I could see a reasonable point. But I'm going to go with the team that has amazing coaching. You have Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh. You have an elite quarterback with Brock Purdy. I'm sorry at this point, I'm not going to sugarcoat it or try and explain why. I think it's just obvious now. And you have blue chip players all over the field. You still have Christian McCaffrey. You still have George Kittle. You still have Kyle Juszczyk. Still got Trent Williams. Still got and you might get Fred Warner back. You got like insanely talented players still. And at some point, I'm just going to trust those guys. I'm still going to trust that unit. This is a unit with Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy. When those two are healthy, when those two are clicking, we've seen an NFC Championship appearance, we've seen a Super Bowl appearance. So when the field is this congested, we don't know who the hell is good. Going with the guys who 2 out of the 3 years, or 3 out of the 4 years, they've won either 12 or 13 games together. Probably not a bad show, in my opinion. I think the call is pretty easy. So, with that being said, I want to thank you all for listening. It has been a phenomenal pod. This is take 2, by the way, for me. This is the second time for me running through this. We had audio issues on the first time. But hey, what can you do? I hope everybody has a phenomenal start to 2026. That is crazy to say. I'm feeling like an old man. And yeah, this is, by the way, last pod at home for me. Next time, it will be back in the dorm for all future pods until the end of the season. So yeah, I want to thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you have a phenomenal day.